kind of silly goofy. Teams.
The transcript.
I need caption. Just share my screen.
Change review. Should be able to present. How did you start it? Did you pull your PowerPoint up and then hit present?
Yeah, I hit present in Teams, but I could instead
Did you like hit-
share my screen.
right?
'Cause
It should be giving the transcription. What about the audio settings for the? Ask anything about transcripts?
Now I can show the transcript.
There it goes.
Okay.
Just have to have it up, and now I think you can adjust it based on where you want it. On the screen.
Okay. That was a little different than I know.
I can read it.
Dylan, can you read that? I wasn't expecting there to be a point first, so I.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonah Heinzelman. I work in housing and residence life as an RD for Wilson Hall and West Green. You know that it's the haunted one. If you've ever seen a sci-fi special on it, but my presentation today is on just kind of some general tips and tricks on creating an inclusive presentation, specifically for people with visual and hearing impairments. So for context, I'm colorblind, and my partner is hard of hearing and uses hearing aids. And so I wanted to like kind of give an overview of things you can do to make your presentations a little bit easier to understand. So the agenda, we're going to talk about inclusion and accessibility as a whole. We're going to go over some examples. I'm going to connect you with some resources, and then I'm going to go over like the meat and potatoes of it, of like best practices for your presentations. So first off, thinking about inclusivity on your own or with another person next to you, reflect on these questions. So what was an experience that you had where you were not the target audience? Whether that was a presentation, an event, but like you went to it, you were not the target audience. How did that make you feel? And then can you name an experience where you were the target audience? What were some of the things that let you know that you were the target audience? What does it mean to feel included? And what does it mean for something to be accessible to you? So take some time either on your own, jotting it down, or like with the person next to you. Think about those questions. I can play instrumental Taylor Swift in the background if y'all would like. I do that for my students. You can't judge my Spotify though. I'll give you all till the end of this song. I thought it was the end. All right. No, no more bad blood. Does anyone remember if it's F12 or F11 to full screen? Okay, neither of them worked. That's okay.
It might be on the bottom, like near the highlighters and stuff.
Under magnify slides for all. Oh no. Okay. You know what? That's all right. Does anyone feel so moved to answer any of these questions? I won't force participation, but be appreciated.
Not all of the questions, but I was thinking a lot about what it means to feel included. And to have things be accessible to you. And one of the things is not just like being invited, but being welcomed and the effort that goes in to make sure that you are comfortable and able to be authentic in that space.
Yeah. Are there any things that like come to mind that would show that you are welcome?
I think it depends on the population. I mean, for me, hard question. It would depend on the event, maybe more specific.
That's fair. Something that I kind of going off of that, I attended a conference in the fall where every room that they had like breakout sessions in, they had a variety of seating styles. So they had like clusters, and they had like rows where people could sit. They had like rows of tables with chairs, tables without chairs, so people using a wheelchair could come and sit there. They had standing tables in the back, and they like were very intentional, and they told us this at the beginning of like making sure to have space on the side so that people with mobility aids could navigate through. Um, and that was something where I was like, oh, like this is nice. They had, like fidget tables on the or fidget toys on the tables, like different things like that. Was like, okay, I feel like I can participate in this. Any other thoughts? That's cool. Um, so a disclaimer before I get into things. While I have done like research on accessibility and inclusion, and I'm very passionate about this topic, um, and making like presentations that are accessible to as broad of an audience as possible, I'm only one person, and I have my very limited life understanding of. I've only been on this earth for 24 years. I'm learning. So if there's anything that I am missing in here that you think I should add for future presentations, please let me know. Um, Always growing. So the first topic, what is accessibility? The United States Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights has a pretty big chunk of a definition. So accessible means a person with a disability is afforded opportunity to acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services as a person without a disability in an equally effective and equally integrated manner, with substantially equivalent ease of use. The person with a disability must be able to obtain the information as fully, equally, and independently as a person without a disability. Although this might not result in identical ease of use compared to that of persons without disabilities, it still must ensure equal opportunity to the educational benefits and opportunities afforded by the technology and equal treatment in the use of such technology. That's a lot. So we'll break it down. Kind of goes into three main parts: participation, benefits, and then discrimination. So these are things to like think about and ask yourself when you're putting together a presentation. So participation, would anyone be excluded from participating fully in this? So we have a Teams link, so anyone can join remotely. I don't think we have anyone, but we could. We could in theory. Let me go back to the transcript. So we have like different ways for people to attend. Is the content being presented in a way that others can interact with? Like checked with Dylan, can this be read from the back of the room? Is the room physically set up to meet a variety of needs? I didn't really have control over the space, but like when I shared about like the conference that I went to where it had the standing tables and the spaced out seating, things like that. Benefits. So what are the benefits of this? And are there barriers to accessing those benefits? So if it's a training, like a continuing education training that people are required to go to, say for like if you are a social worker and you need those continuing education credits, um, would everyone be able to access that? Like, do you need to participate? Do you need to be there in person to get the credit, or is it something they could do online? Um, can it be accessed in a variety of ways? How are we measuring success or completion of that? And then discrimination. Is there negative treatment of different groups of people? Um, this is sometimes more of like blatant things. Are you purposefully not making your presentation accessible to people who are colorblind? Discrimination. Um, yeah, are you denying anyone access to something that would make the presentation more accessible to them? So if someone asks for like printed copies or the subtitles, like the transcript. So if someone were to be like, "Hey Jonah, would you turn on the transcript?" And I'm like, "No," that would not be nice of me. That would not be inclusive. So some examples. One example is gatekeeping resources. So if you are, oh no, my toy. If you are teaching a class or hosting a program and you don't include like information on how to request an ASL interpreter or how to register for accommodations. That would be gatekeeping those resources. So take a second and think this situation where you're not providing that information in your syllabus or in the first day of class, is this limiting people's participation? Is this denying them access to the benefits of their education? Is this discriminating against those people? It's all of those things. And that one's more of a blatant, like you're purposely not sharing those things. I was think of a less in your face example. You're presenting in a large space, such as, the faculty panel we were just at in the Baker Ballrooms, or you're in Morton 201. There is a microphone that's provided for you to either like clip on or to hold. But the speakers aren't really working. It's taking a second. You're like, it's okay, I have a theater background. I'm a loud talker. I don't really need that, right? No. So what's the issue in this situation? Oh, that was supposed to be a question for y'all. What's the issue in that situation?
If you're hearing impaired, that could be really problematic to you understanding the presentation, especially if you come in and there's no seats towards like the front of the room, or for whatever reason, you're not comfortable sitting in the front.
Yeah. And did I see another hand? Okay. Dylan.
And going with the same piece, if you're looking at like the ballroom, how you set up the room, also impact individual hearing impaired. Additionally, no matter how large, how loud you are, you're only going in one direction. So you're again going into like a piece of like the setup of the room. You have to talk at a direction. So like not taking that into account.
Yeah. So going off of like how the room is physically set up with the tables in Baker Ballroom, some of the chairs are, I can't remember if it was like this just now, but I know in some situations there's like a seat that's like at each table where the back is to the speakers. And I asked my fiance for permission to use him as an example in this. He's hard of hearing and he reads lips. So if we're in that situation and his back is to the speaker, he's not going to be able to read their lips and know what they're saying, especially if their microphone and like the speaker isn't working. And we have in the student accessibility like accommodations that we offer, one of the things is it's called an FM system. I don't know what it stands for, but it's essentially like a little hearing aid that students can put in that will amplify what's going through the speakers in the classrooms. So before my partner got his hearing aids, he had that through the university. And so when professors weren't using the microphones and like weren't at the podium or would like pace back and forth and you'd only catch like bits, the only parts that would come through the system was what was said right in front of the microphone. So he was not getting like the full experience that students without a hearing disability were getting. So a bit of history. The standard presentation was designed for an audience that's able to do these following things with minimal or no effort, really, like no conscious effort, and without the use of any aid. So that's reading text of any size on a projected screen, differentiating between colors, able to process spoken speech in real time, and are able to sit in one position for an extended period of time without getting up to use the restroom, eat a snack, check their blood sugar. The list goes on. And this is like how a lot of things were set up for people who are able to do these things, right? But it doesn't have to be that way anymore. Shouldn't have been that way ever, but like now, we have access to the internet and we learn things and we learn how to make things better. So we have resources. One of the resources on campus that like, I wouldn't say is like highly underutilized, but I think people don't often understand the full breadth of what it can be used for is accessibility services. So yes, they do student accommodations. So students can register for accommodations and then, they'll get a letter that they can email their professors. They can get accommodations for housing, which like I run into a lot working in housing, but they can also provide training to faculty and staff. And they also have a whole page on communication access. So like people hosting events or like professors teaching classes, like students can request ASL interpreters, and then the accessibility office will provide those, or you can request, like the event planners can request to have an interpreter and can like pay for one ahead of time without someone requesting, which is really cool. And as I said, they handle all student accessibility accommodations. There's also a lot of online resources. So Microsoft Office, PowerPoint specifically has an accessibility checker feature. And some of the things I'll go into in the best practices section, it'll tell you like what's the reading order of the slide. It'll like read out the different alternate texts for different images that you put in there. So because this right next to it is like an image of a PowerPoint presentation, in PowerPoint, I put in like the alternate text as like a decorative image of a PowerPoint presentation. So someone using a screen reader would like, it would tell them what that picture is rather than them, missing out on it. There's also a lot of online accessibility checker tools. So if you just Google like accessibility checker, there's a lot of them. And there are a lot of free ones too. So this one that I highlighted or that I put here is a color contrast checker. This is something I run into a lot, especially since I have only attended universities where green is one of the main colors, and that is a color that my brain and my eyes do not like. So an example of that is here. So checking color contrast, background of white, foreground some text black. Very easy to read. Excellent. Very easy to differentiate. The one next to it, I made it. I don't know what it says because the background is orange and the foreground is green. You can't really differentiate that. Or I'm speaking from my experience as someone who can't, because I'm colorblind. I can't tell what the heck that's saying. But if you can see colors, you can use contrast checkers like this to double check to make sure that what you're putting on the screen is readable. And I love my department dearly. Something that I've told a lot of people about it, and people just forget, is that I can't see that. And at least 1 year or one presentation a year during training, they put green on orange or orange on green or like white on bright green. And I cannot read the slides, so I make my like coworkers next to me read them for me. So best practices. First one, alternative text. So in presentations, you'll often use visuals. Some of those visuals are decorative, like little dots or like little blobs. Canva loves to put blobs in the background. But some of them are really important. So this one, I don't have any actual data because I'm not a data person anymore. But like if this were a very important visual, it's important when you're making a presentation to put an alternative text on it. So you can put it either underneath it where it'll like show to everyone, or it can be hidden and only read by screen readers. So people who are trying to navigate the presentation, not visually, but using a screen reader, so it'll like read out everything to them, will read the alternate text that's provided for the image and describe it to them. Reading order. So if you have a slide like this, or like this, it's important to specify, this is all of this is like in the accessibility checker portion of PowerPoint for reference. So like if you're making one, you can kind of set it up that way. You can choose what order you want things read in. So, if I'm just making this presentation and I just slap everything on and kind of mess around with it, the screen reader will go in the order that I put things on the screen, which might not make a lot of sense. So if you want things to be read in order of like 1, 2, 3, 4, you specify that in the reading order. Hyperlinks. In the age of the internet, people use links a lot. And it's important that when you're including links in your presentation, to have the text of the link be understandable. So if a screen reader were to read this out, for the first one, it would list all of these letters. It'd be like HTTPS www.msn.com/ and just keep going and read all these, everything. You can't really skip it. That was a little weird. So you can edit your links to say the title of whatever you're linking. So this, I don't know why I picked this. I thought it was kind of interesting. It was a shark. I don't know. But since I edited this hyperlink so that the text said the name of the article, the screen reader would instead say elusive megamouth shark caught off Zanzibar instead of all the string of letters and stuff. Color. So color can be a very useful tool for differentiating things. But when you start using multiple different colors in one thing, people who can't differentiate colors aren't really going to know what you're trying to say here. So instead of having, 4 symbols where the only thing that differentiates between them is the color, have a different color and symbol for each thing. So instead of being like everything's, labeled with stars, instead of being like only read the things with a pink star, but I wouldn't really know which one is the pink star. Be like pink star, green triangle, have a variety of things. And so this is ensuring that color is not the only means of conveying the information. You can also do things like bold the text, use italics, underline it, or even use different fonts. Yeah. Color continued. I touched on this a bit earlier. Make sure there's sufficient contrast in between the background and the foreground, like the background and the color of the text. You can use color backgrounds. There's nothing against that, but you have to make sure that it's readable. I can't read this first one because there's not enough contrast, but dark orange versus white, I can't difference. I can't. God, allergy season has not been kind to me. I'm excited for the cold snap that's going to hit soon. Color contrast. Having that strong contrast makes it easier for people with low vision or people who are colorblind to see and use the content. Slide titles. It's important that every slide has a unique title. Because if you are using a screen reader and you're trying to navigate, if every slide has the same title of like plants, 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 or even like plants continued, it's going to be really hard for them to reference back to which specific slide. But if you're using unique ones like plants, ferns, plants, trees, plants, I had to think really hard about a third type of plant. And so I put vines. My fiance is a plant biology person, and I did not want to ask him. But yeah, so like making sure that they all have unique titles for the screen reader. That way they can like skim through it in the screen reader instead of having to be like, okay, now which plant thing is the important one right now? Tables. Tables can be really useful, especially when you're trying to like show different bits of data. But if you are going to use tables, try to make them as simple as possible. So screen readers will go like down and then over. So it'll go header 1, data point 1, data point 2, header 2, data point 1, data point 2, and then over. But if you like merge cells, it gets really confusing and it doesn't really like go in the order you intend it to. So try to make it as simple as possible for screen readers to be able to, read. And as I said, they'll go by columns. So it'll organize it like that. Use header labels, very important. Font choices. So using a larger font size, the base, like what's recommended, like the smallest would be like 18 point. Use a font that is sans serif. Serifs are the little doodads on the ends of letters, for flair. And make sure there's sufficient white space. So if you're using like a really big letter, blocky text, maybe adjust the spacing of the words so that there's more white space in between, so that people who are dyslexic or people who have low vision and can't see very far can differentiate between the letters. So I can read this so easily versus I can read this so easily. It's really tiny on purpose. And lastly, I didn't include any videos in this because I didn't really need to. But if you are going to include videos, it's really important to like show either subtitles or a transcription, because that way people who can't hear what's going on in the video can see what's going on in the video. And closed captions often will describe like audio cues of like the music or the sound versus just like subtitles, which or the transcript, which will just capture what's being said. And then video description means like an audio narrated description of the visuals of the video. So those are often inserted into like the pauses in the video. So like if you're watching a nature documentary, and it'll like describe, what the little rabbit is doing, that kind of thing. And that makes it more accessible for people who can't see the I don't know why I can't talk today, sorry. People who can't see the video, whether they're blind or have low vision, the audio description will like clue them in on what is happening in the video. So, if you're have a video that you're presenting, make sure that you have the transcript on, and like if you're making a video accessible to people to watch later, if you can, make sure that there's like subtitles a bit available for it, but closed captioning or an audio description is even better. So to sum it up, use accessibility checkers, whether that's in PowerPoint or the websites. I don't think Canva has an accessibility checker thing yet, which is a bummer because Canva is so cool. But use those. Or if you have someone, not to like tokenize people with disabilities, I often put myself out there as being like, if you need someone to double check something for color blindness, show it to me. Like, use accessibility checkers first, or you can come over to Wilson Hall and ask me. That's fine too. Use your resources. So use those accessibility checkers, work with the accessibility office. You know, in general, don't just do what's easiest for you. Take the time to be mindful when it comes to accessibility and inclusive practices. So like, yeah, it's easiest to not have to click on a transcript and record the video, but you're making such a difference if you do. So, that was a lot faster than I thought it'd be. Any questions? Also okay if there's not questions. I will happily sit. Are we sending them out?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I would imagine since we're gonna be saving the recording that we will.
Yes, because there was the Teams link on the conference website, and I'm assuming if you click it, it'll say like the meeting is over, but in the chat, there will be the recording and the transcript link. I'm also very Googleable and will email it to anyone who needs it. So. Awesome.
What do you think the number one mistake is that people make presenting in terms of inclusivity?
I'd say not including transcript or subtitles. Because it's beneficial not just for people who have a hearing impairment, but like if you have ADHD and you like, or even if you are perfectly neurotypical, not normal typical. Oh my God. If you are neurotypical, but you space out for a second, having the transcript makes it really easy to be like, oh, that's where we are in the conversation. Yeah. Also, put in colors that I can't see.
Are there any colors to stay away from particularly? Besides
Um,
green?
Brown, red, green.
So there's three main types of color blindness. There's like the one that people always think of, which is like you just see in black and white in shades of gray, obviously. And then there's red green. So reds, greens, browns, oranges, anything that has like those kind of Christmassy tones all end up looking pretty darn similar. So Christmas, well, I don't celebrate Christmas, but Christmas time is real interesting to me. Also, a little note with that, everyone was telling me when I moved to Ohio that I was gonna love the fall because it had very different colors than we had in Colorado because we just had like aspen trees and pines, so like yellow and green. But I came here and I was like, there's no difference. Like I literally do not. I was like, I don't get it. And yeah, no, it's because I guess the trees turn colors I can't see. Um, but there's the red, green, black, like seeing things in shades of gray, and then there's blue, yellow. Um, yeah, there are. If I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I know you can like Google like color blindness simulators, so you can kind of see like what it looks like. I don't know how well they work because it all looks the same to me, but yeah.
Thank you.
A good little trick also, um color filters. I actually might have one. Oh, I don't have one on right now. But something that you can do if you want to check to see if things are still distinguishable, if everything is grayscale, is to turn on color filters and then click on grayscale, and then everything will just be gray. So you can still kind of differentiate. When I initially made this presentation, I did it entirely in shades of gray, because those were my most used colors on Canva, and I was lazy. But then I was like, no, pink backgrounds. So, but you can always turn that on to kind of check and see. But like the color filters are also just kind of cool. I usually have this one. I don't know. I kind of mess around and turn them on. I cannot remember what the name of colorblind I am. I'll be honest. I just kind of go with it. I know no, it's this one. It's Tritanopia. Every man in my family has that. But I'll turn them on sometimes when I'm making presentations to like or reading presentations to make it easier for me. Um, I turn them off for this one because otherwise you would have been able to see the color contrast things and wouldn't have got my point across. Yeah. Anything else?
You mentioned the font that you use is the sans serif.
Hmm.
Is that one that you should always use? It's easiest to
So
read visually, or?
the one that I used for this is actually the Open Dyslexia font, where it like, because dyslexia, you like, the text will like distort and like move around.
Yeah.
And with this font, it weights all of the letters at the bottom, to make it easier. Comic Sans is also a great one. That's a really accessible font. But ones like Times New Roman and like Georgia, I think Helvetica, ones where they have those little doodads. Yeah,
Not like.
bad.
What is it, Calibri? Like.
Calibri.
I think Calibri is one of the okay ones.
It's very straight. and
Yeah.
It's very plain.
Yeah, the plainer it is, even though it's not as like fun, it's the easier it is to read.
Should we use the
So-
wider ones, like, some of the fonts have a narrow option.
Do not use narrow.
Right, okay, so
Wider.
that's what I was asking, yeah, wide, okay, great, thank you.
And obviously there are some like, this is not a graphic design presentation, right? The graphic designers have use for other fonts where I do not. When it comes to making presentations accessible, the more boring it looks, the more accessible it is a fairly good rule of thumb. I had a professor in grad school who every slide was just black text on a white background and there were no pictures. I had no problems in his class. I understood everything on the slides. The class itself was a little confusing, but I passed it, so here now. But yeah, more boring, more accessible. Yeah.
So just the person who's presenting tips on, speaking, body movement, things like that, that could help with.
If there is a microphone or a camera that you're being filmed on, staying like within the range of it. So I know that my computer has like I can be here, I couldn't be in the corner kind of thing. Ways of speaking is where it gets a little gray, because we can't really police people's accents, or like I had a very severe stutter growing up, and sometimes when I'm nervous, like right now, it might come back. And so we can't really be like, don't stutter, don't use this accent. Like that's not really possible. Which is why we have like transcripts. Trying to think. If you have the resources, which resources is in like unlimited paper and printer ink. Physical handouts are great. Or having like a QR code that people can scan that would give them a PDF of the presentation that they could access on their phone or computer. If you're presenting in a class, or if you have the ability to like know who's coming to something, sharing the presentation ahead of time. I know a lot of students use I cannot remember the name of it. Names do not stick in my head. But it's a note-taking app that you can download the presentation that your, professor puts up, upload it into the app, and then it'll like take a transcript on each of the slides as you're going. And so putting the presentation out there if you can ahead of time. So like I'm teaching a class for the new RAs. I post my presentation ahead of time, just in case anyone needs that. Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Great, thank you so much.
And y'all have like 20 minutes until your next one.
I'm sorry.